This is the story about the mines and town of Greenwater, California. This old mine camp was located way out in the middle of nowhere in the Death Valley. Old-time prospectors knew about different deposits in this part of the country as far back as the 1880s. But because this place was in the middle of nowhere and was a hostile and desolate environment, not a whole lot of work was done here. However, in the early 1900s, that all changed when mining around the town of Rhyolite started. And being as this place was only about 20-some miles away, exploration started to get some traction out here. There were actually 3 town sites in the district in the beginning: Furnace, Kunze, and Ramsey. These small settlements were not much more than tent camps and never had too much of a population base. Then in 1904, a couple of prospectors, Birney and Phil Creasor, were out looking for gold and came across some rich surface outcrops of copper in the Greenwater Valley. These 2 men sent some samples off to be assayed, and the next thing you know, Frederick Heinze, a big-time mining man who was known as the Copper King from Butte, Montana, came down to see these outcrops for himself. These copper showings looked so promising that Heinze bought 16 claims right on the spot for $275,000. Of course, with these new discoveries plus being close to Rhyolite, by 1906 a whole new mining boom had taken off. Now, the first thing you need to realize is that people back in the olden days were just like they are today. Everyone wanted to make money and had big dreams of getting rich. Today it's all about investing in tech stocks and cryptocurrencies. But back then it was mines, railroads, and power. Since electricity was one of the big flavors of the day, investing in the right copper play was just like a winning Powerball ticket. You see, big cities in California and elsewhere in the United States were all getting wired up for electricity, and the need for copper wire was at all-time highs. And so when easy copper deposits were found, there was usually no shortage of investors willing to pony up the cash. In fact, big money names like Charles Schwab, Senator William Clark, and most of their cronies were first in line betting money on this copper play. And as usual, once word got out about these guys buying in, the rush was on. One of the biggest drawbacks of this area was the total lack of water. Water had to be hauled in by mule trains, but most of that water would be consumed just on the trip in. With the influx of more and more people, the premium for water rose to as much as $15 to $20 a barrel. One traveler counted more than 100 freighting wagons heading towards the district in one day, straining their resources to supply the growing demands of the new boom camp. A wagon master counted $25,000 worth of supplies heading into the Greenwater district in one day as the rush continued. Another counted more than 200 miners and prospectors heading into the area looking for work and to stake claims, and all this activity put strain on the water supply. While all this was going on, plans were in the works for a town site of which showed 32 blocks with over 550 lots for sale and was already approved by the county commissioner. There were also 73 different mining companies busy digging shafts with hopes of being first to get copper ore out of the ground, and talks about railroad lines being run from Rhyolite to transport supplies and ore. Some of the bigger mines were the United Greenwater Copper Company, the Greenwater and Death Valley Copper Company, which was owned and promoted by Charles Schwab. There was also the Greenwater Furnace Creek Company, the Funeral Creek Copper Mine, and the Greenwater Ely Consolidated. By the end of 1906, Greenwater is said to have about a dozen saloons, along with numerous tents and wooden structures being built at a frantic pace. Close to 1,000 people had moved into the area, staking claims or setting up shop. The town of Greenwater was heavily promoted by both newspapers and stock promoters. An article posted in the Los Angeles Herald in the fall of 1906 was quoted as saying, "Excitement over the copper deposits recently discovered in the Greenwater, California district is on the increase. Hundreds of men have braved the dangers of the desert to get into the district and locate prospects in the new field 60 miles south of Bullfrog. It is stated that within the past 2 weeks, there has been realized cash aggregating a grand total of $4,125,000. The mere price of everything in the district has shot sky high. In 20 days, prices of property in the district have gone from $200 to $10,000 and in some cases even higher. Another paper, the Bullfrog Miner, was noted saying that nearly $20 million had been invested in 100 claims in the last 6 months, and that Greenwater was without a doubt the greatest copper mining territory ever found in the world. They envisioned a city of 10,000 within the next couple of years. By early 1907, Greenwater had close to 1,500 people, and a couple dozen buildings were being constructed. The camp had a couple of barber shops, a butcher shop, and there were at least 5 restaurants. There was a lawyer and a shoe repair store, a couple of mining offices, and even an undertaker had set up shop. However, behind the scenes there was one newspaper that wasn't jumping onto this hyped-up bandwagon, and that was the Engineering and Mining Journal. Their only comments on the Greenwater discovery were that the district is too new to permit trustworthy predictions as to its future, and it will take many months before development work can be carried far enough to establish its real value. Sure enough, almost as fast as the boom had started, it was on its way out. Yes, the copper deposits were at surface and very rich, but there was a much bigger problem, and that was that these deposits didn't go very deep. Mine shafts were being sunk deeper in hopes of trying to find more copper, but there was none to be had. A couple of newspaper articles in the fall of that year were written in the tone of reassurance, but everyone knew the boom had become a bust. Yes, the Engineering and Mining Journal was right. They had seen this same play before, and by January of 1908, the town of Greenwater had just one saloon left, and only 50 people in the entire camp. Now, of course, all these old stories do have some happy endings. Take, for instance, the story of Charles Creasor, for example. Charles arrived in Rhyolite in January of 1906 with 30 cents in his pocket and got into the restaurant business there. With the big boom that was going on in Greenwater, Charles grub-staked a couple of prospectors with some leftover food from his dining room, and by November of that year, he sold the claims that the 2 prospectors had staked for him for a total of $150,000. That's how the fast money was made back in the mining boom days. Now, not very far north of this location was another mining camp that had a similar story, and that was the mine camp of Leadfield. If you haven't watched that video, I'll leave a link at the end of this video, as well as a link in the description box below. There really is nothing left of the towns or the camps of Greenwater. I read about some off-road travelers who went through there who mentioned old foundations and debris from some old buildings and old tailing dumps. I hope you enjoyed this short story about the mine camps of Greenwater. Please like, share, and subscribe so we can continue to bring you more old lost mine stories.